Alright guys, if you want to become a console demon on DBD, the first step is to get comfortable with your controller. What I mean by that is that you have to use your camera angles, you have to move your analog sticks to get a better advantage to win that chase. I see a lot of times where people are not using their right analog stick to look around or look behind them while they're in a chase because they're scared that they're going to bump into something. You gotta get comfortable with your analog stick and you gotta look behind you in order to take your game to the next level. This allows you to look at check spots a lot more, and the killer won't be able to mind game you a lot more because you're looking behind you or looking around you as you're running. And I get it. I was that person at one point where I didn't want to look behind, and it kind of hindered me for a good little while. But there are multiple things you can do to get better at this. The first thing I want to say is just running. Run while looking behind, looking around. Just keep moving your right and left analog stick while you're running, and eventually you'll start seeing progression and you'll be able to implement it in your chases, which makes for longer chases. If you're not comfortable doing it that way, I say you go into a private match with a friend and try to win chases just by looking around, maybe looking back. Win chases by not looking forward. Try doing that and it will help you tremendously. I think this is the fastest way to get better at it, is by running without looking forward at all, and see how far you can make it without getting caught. Just understand guys that it's going to take time, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of brain power, because with the difference in camera angle and you turning and left and right, it's going to discombobulate your fingers a lot. It's going to discombobulate your mind and you're going to feel out of whack. The second thing I want to talk about is spacing. Spacing is a huge one. I'm going to break it into two categories: FOV, or field of view spacing, and spacing away from the killer. Alright, the first category I want to talk about is FOV, or field of view spacing. I feel like that's a huge one because most of the videos you guys see on YouTube are of PC gamers, and I played on PC for about a year, and I've noticed one thing that's a little different from console for sure is the field of view. There was a point in time where you couldn't change your FOV settings for console. I believe now that you can, but even then at default PC gamers had an advantage with FOV because I felt like it was wider out, so they're able to see more. This kind of brainwashed the DBD community into thinking what distance you're supposed to have. There's a universal distance for everything, but with the FOV like that, it kind of brainwashed the community into thinking what specific distance is for certain things, like getting over a pallet or over a window before getting hit. Guys, understand that FOV is a huge part of knowing your distance away from the killer, because eventually you start to understand the windows and the pallets you can make and the things that you know you're going to get hit on. This kind of leads into my second point, is distance away from the killer. You always want to keep your distance away from the killer. It's a lot harder with specific killers that you're playing, so it's going to vary depending on the killer that you're playing. This clip right here is a good example because I'm playing against the nurse, which is, the nurse is all about closing distance fast, getting kills fast. So with killers that close distance fast, you want to keep more distance away from the killer. As where with an M1 killer, or a killer that doesn't really have an ability to close distance fast, you're more okay with being closer to that killer, but also keeping a fair distance away from that killer. The same applies if you're at a loop as well. You want to try to keep your distance so that when it's time, you can break out from one loop to another loop and just keep going from loop to loop. The best way to get better at this is simply by playing. I always say the best way to get better at something is by continuing to do it, and that is the case for this game. You literally have to see it. You have to get those mental reps in order to get better at it. After seeing it for so long, you're going to get better at it, so continue to learn as you play. Last thing to make you a console demon is knowing that split seconds count. Yes, split seconds do count in this game. What I mean by that is your left analog stick. Let's say you're not moving and your left analog stick is center. The time it takes for your left analog stick to go from center to the outside of the radius can really cost you that split second. This is one of those things you want to keep in the back of your head while you're in a chase. Because in a game of split seconds like this, movements like that can really be super costly in winning a chase or losing a chase. One way to improve on this is to stay moving. This doesn't mean stay moving all the time, because this is also a game of patience. You have to find that balance to where you know when to stay moving and when to be patient at some loops. It's not going to work out every time for you, but you do have to find that balance to keep those split seconds in your favor. If you do these tips right here, you too will become a console demon.